As the sanctuary stood first in Shiloh, Joseph's possession, then in Jerusalem, Benjamin's possession, so did this tribe follow Joseph's tribes with its sacrifices. The charger signified Rachel, the mother of Benjamin, who bore him when Jacob was 100 years old, and in memory of this, as well as of Benjamin's attainment of 30 years when he came to Egypt, the weight of the charger amounted to 130 shekels. The bowl indicated the cup Joseph used to discover the other brothers' sentiments towards Benjamin, and both vessels, charger and cup, were filled with fine flour, for both Joseph's and Benjamin's lands were found worthy in being situated for God's sanctuary. The spoon of 10 shekels of gold, full of incense, corresponded to the 10 sons of Benjamin, all of whom were pious men. The 3 burnt offerings corresponded to the 3 temples erected in Jerusalem, Benjamin's property: the Temple of Solomon, the Temple of the exiles returned from Babylon, and the temple to be erected by the Messiah. The sin offering, the kid of the goats, points to the building of the temple by the wicked King Herod, who atoned for his execution of the learned men by the erection of the sanctuary. The 2 oxen of the peace offering corresponded to the 2 deliverers of the Jews that sprang from the tribe of Benjamin, Mordecai and Esther. The 5 heads each of the small kinds of cattle for a peace offering symbolized the triple distinction of Benjamin and his tribe by 5 gifts. The gift of honor that Joseph gave his brother Benjamin 5 times exceeded that of all of his brothers. When Joseph made himself known to his brothers, he gave Benjamin 5 changes of clothes, and so too did the Benjamite Mordecai receive from Ahasuerus 5 garments of state. Regarding Dan, in his blessing Jacob likened Dan to Judah. Hence, the tribe of Dan stood at the head of the 4th camp of Israel, and their prince offered his gifts before those of Asher and Naphtali. Jacob, in his blessing to Dan, thought principally of the great hero Samson, his descendant. Hence, the gifts of this tribe allude chiefly to the history of the Danite judge. Samson was a Nazirite, and to this alluded the silver charger for storing bread, for it is the duty of a Nazirite, at the expiration of the period of his vow, to present bread as an offering. To Samson also alluded the bowl, in Hebrew called Mizrach, creeping, for he was lame of both feet, and hence could only creep and crawl. The spoon of 10 shekels of gold recalled the 10 laws that are imposed upon Nazirites, and that Samson had to obey. The 3 burnt offerings had a similar significance, for Samson's mother received 3 injunctions from the angel, who said to her husband Manoah, "She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing." The sin offering, which consisted of a kid, called in Hebrew Sa'ir, corresponded to the admonition given to Samson's mother not to shave his hair. The 2 oxen corresponded to the 2 pillars of which Samson took hold to demolish the house of the Philistines, whereas the 3 kinds of small cattle were presented as offerings, symbolizing the 3 battles that Samson undertook against the Philistines. The judge must pronounce judgment before it is executed. Hence, too, the tribe of Asher, the executors of justice, followed Dan. The name Asher also signifies good fortune, referring to the good fortune of Israel, who was chosen to be God's people. And in accordance with this name, also the gifts of the tribe of Asher allude to the distinction of Israel. The charger, 130 shekels of silver in weight, corresponds to the nations of the world, whom, however, God repudiated, choosing Israel in their place. The bowl of 70 shekels corresponds to the 70 pious souls of whom Israel consisted when they moved to Egypt. Both vessels were filled with fine flour. God sent his prophets to the other nations as well as to Israel, but Israel alone declared itself willing to accept the Torah. This nation accepted the spoon of 10 shekels of gold filled with incense, every man among them being willing to accept the 10 commandments and the Torah. The 3 burnt offerings corresponded to the 3 crowns that Israel received from their God, the crown of the Torah, the crown of the priesthood, and the crown of the kingdom, for which reason also golden crowns were fashioned on the ark in which the Torah was kept. on the altar on which the priests offered sacrifices, and on the table that symbolized the kingdom. But the highest of all is the crown of a good name, which a man earns through good deeds. For the crucial test is not the study of the Torah, but the life conforming to it. For this reason also there was a sin offering among the offerings, corresponding to the crown of good deeds, for these alone can serve as an expiation. The 2 oxen indicate the 2 Torahs that God gave his people, the written and the oral, whereas the 15 peace offerings of small cattle correspond to the 3 patriarchs and the 12 fathers of the tribes, for these 15 God had chosen. As Jacob blessed Asher, then Naphtali, so also did these 2 tribes succeed each other in the offerings at the dedication of the tabernacle. Naphtali, Jacob's son, was a very affectionate son, who was ever ready to execute his father's every command. The prince of the tribe of Naphtali followed his ancestors' example, and by his gifts to the sanctuary sought to recall the 3 patriarchs and their wives. The silver charger, the weight of 130 shekels, symbolized Sarah, who was unique among her sex in her piety, and who almost attained the age of 130 years. A silver bowl for sprinkling blood recalled Abraham, who was thrown far away from his home. The weight of the bowl was 70 shekels, as Abraham also was 70 years old when God made the covenant of the pieces with him. The charger and the bowl were both filled with fine flour, mingled with oil, as also Abraham and Sarah were imbued with a love for good and pious deeds. The spoon of 10 shekels of gold alludes to Abraham as well, for Abraham conquered the evil inclination and resisted the great 10 temptations, whereas the 3 burnt offerings and the sin offering corresponded to the offerings made by Abraham at the covenant of the pieces. The 2 oxen for the peace offering indicate Isaac and Rebekah, whereas the 3 kinds of small cattle allude to Jacob, Leah, and Rachel. But the sum total of the offerings of these 3 species was 15, corresponding to these 3 and the 12 fathers of the tribes. Apart from the significance of the offerings of the tribal princes had for each individual tribe respectively, they also symbolize the history of the world from the time of Adam to the erection of the tabernacle. The silver charger indicated Adam, who lived 930 years, and the numerical equivalent of the letters Karar Kasef, silver charger, amounts to the same. Corresponding to the weight of 130 shekels, Adam begat his son Seth, the actual father of the future generations, at the age of 130 years. The silver bowl alludes to Noah, for, as it weighed 70 shekels, so too did 70 nations spring from Noah. Both these vessels were filled with fine flour, as Adam and Noah were both full of good deeds. The spoon of 10 shekels of gold corresponded to the 10 words of God by which the world was created, to the 10 seraphot, to the 10 lists of generations in the Scriptures, to the 10 essential constituent parts of the human body, to the 10 miracles God wrought for Israel in Egypt, and to the 10 miracles experienced by Israel by the Red Sea. The 3 burned offerings were meant to recall the 3 patriarchs. The kid of goats indicated Joseph, the 2 oxen corresponded to Moses and Aaron, and the 5 rams to the 5 distinguished sons of Zerah, Zimri, Ethan, Heman, Calcol, and Dara, whereas the 5 goats and the 5 lambs symbolize the 5 senses of mankind, by means of which the existence of things is determined. The sum total of the gifts of the 12 princes of the tribes also had a symbolical significance. The 12 chargers corresponded to the 12 constellations, the 12 bowls to the 12 months, the 12 spoons to the 12 guides of men, which are the heart that bestows understanding and insight, the kidneys that give counsel, good as well as evil, the mouth that cuts all kinds of food, the tongue that renders speech possible, the palate that tastes the flavors of food, the windpipe that renders possible breathing and the utterance of sounds, the esophagus that swallows food and drink, the lungs that absorb fluids, the liver that promotes laughter, the crop that grinds all food, and the stomach that affords pleasant sleep. All the silver of the vessels that weighed 2,400 shekels corresponded to the years that had passed from the creation of the world to the advent of Moses in the 40th year of his life. All the gold of the spoons, the weight of which was 120 shekels, corresponds to the years of Moses' life, for he died at the age of 120. The different species of animals offered as sacrifices corresponds to the different ranks of the leaders of Israel. The 12 bulls to the 12 kings, the 12 rams to the princes of the tribes, the 12 kids of the goats to the governors, the 12 sheep to the government officials. The 24 oxen for a peace offering corresponded to the books of the Scriptures, and the divisions of the priests, which were also meant to serve as an atonement for the 24,000 men who, owing to their worship of Peor, died of the plague. The 60 rams of the peace offering corresponded to the 60 myriads of Israel's fighting hosts, the 60 he-goats to the 60 empires, and the 60 he-lambs to the building of the second tabernacle, that measured 60 cubits in height and 60 in width. The gifts of the 12 princes of the tribes were not only equal in number, but also in the size of the objects bestowed, every tribe making exactly the same offering to the sanctuary. None among them wished to outrival the others. Such harmony reigned among them and such unity of spirit that God valued the service of each as if he had brought not only his own gifts, but also those of his companions. As a reward for this mutual regard and friendship, God granted them with the distinction of permitting them to present their offerings even on the Sabbath day. The revelations in the tabernacle. God honors him who tries to escape honor. Moses, in his humility, felt that his mission as leader of the people ended with the erection of the tabernacle, as Israel could now satisfy all their spiritual needs without his aid. But God said, "As truly as you live, I have for you a far greater task than any you have accomplished yet. For you shall instruct my children about clean and unclean, and shall teach them how to give offerings to me." God then called Moses to the tabernacle to reveal him there the laws and teachings. Moses, in his humility, did not dare enter the tabernacle, so that God had to summon him to enter. Moses, however, could not enter the sanctuary while a cloud was on it, this being a sign that the demons held sway, but waited until the cloud had moved on. The voice that called Moses came from heaven in the form of a tube of fire, and rested over the 2 cherubim, from where Moses perceived its sound. This voice was as powerful as at the revelation on Sinai, when the souls of all Israel escaped in terror. Still, it was heard by no one but Moses. Not even the angels heard it, for the words of God were destined exclusively for Moses. Aaron, too, with the exception of the 3 cases in which God revealed himself to him, never received his commands except through the communications of Moses. God called Moses twice, caressingly, and when he had answered, "Here I am," God's words were revealed to him, and every commandment was a special revelation. God always allowed a pause to take place between the different laws to be imparted, that Moses might have time to rightly grasp what he was told. On the first day of the dedication of the temple, not less than 8 important sections of the law were communicated to Moses by God. As a reward for his piety, Aaron and his descendants to all eternity received the laws of sanctity, which are a special distinction for the priests, and these laws were revealed on this day. It was on this day also that Aaron and his sons received the gifts of the priests, for although even at the revelation on Sinai Israel had set them aside, they were still not given to Aaron and his sons until this day when the sanctuary was anointed. The second law revealed on this day was the separation of the Levites from among the children of Israel, that they might be dedicated to the sanctuary. For God elevates no man to an office unless he has tried him and found him worthy of his calling. He did not say, "And the Levites shall be mine," before he had tried this tribe and found them worthy. In Egypt, none but the tribe of Levi observed the Torah and clung to the token of the Abrahamic covenant. while the other tribes abandoned both Torah and covenant, and like the Egyptians practiced idolatry. In the desert also, it was this tribe alone that did not take part in the worship of the golden calf. Justly, therefore, did God's choice fall upon this godly tribe, who on this day were consecrated as the servants of God and His sanctuary. The ceremonies connected with the consecration of the Levites had much in common with the regulations for cleansing of lepers. Originally, the firstborn had been the servants of the sanctuary, but, owing to the worship of the golden calf, they lost this prerogative, and the Levites replaced them. It was also for this reason that the Levites were obliged to observe regulations similar to those of the cleansing of lepers, because they took the place of men who by their sins had defiled themselves. The offerings that the Levites brought on this occasion consisted of 2 bullocks, as these were used also for a burnt offering whenever the congregation, seduced by others, commits idolatry. For Israel would not have worshipped the golden calf had not the mixed multitude misled them. For whoever worships an idol by this act renounces the whole Torah. Hence did the Levites have to offer up another bullock for a sin offering, in accordance with the law, that if the whole congregation of Israel has done something against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty, then they shall offer up a young bullock for their sin. As the Levites have been chosen to do the service of the children of Israel in the tabernacle of the congregation, and to make an atonement for the children of Israel, God ordered the congregation to be present at the congregation of the Levites, for whoever had a sin offering must in person bring it to the tabernacle. Therefore, too, did the elders of Israel have to put their hands upon the Levites, according to the prescription that the elders must put their hands upon the sin of the congregation. Aaron, like the elders, participated in the ceremony of the consecration, lifting up every single Levite as a token that he was now dedicated to the sanctuary. Aaron's extraordinary strength is proven by the fact that he was able to lift up 22,000 men in one day. The cleansing of the camp. The third law revealed on this day was the command that the children of Israel put out of camp every leper and every unclean person. When Israel moved out of Egypt, the majority of the people were afflicted with physical defects and diseases, contracted during their work on the structures they had compelled to erect in Egypt. One had his hand crushed by a falling stone, another's eye blinded by the splashing of lye in the loam. It was a battered and crippled host that reached Sinai, eager to receive the Torah. But God said, "Does it become the glory of the Torah that I should bestow it on a race of cripples? Nor do I want to await the coming of another, healthy generation. For I want no further delay in the revelation of the Torah." Then God sent angels to heal all among Israel that were diseased or afflicted with defects, so that all the children of Israel were sound and whole when they received the Torah. They remained in this condition until they worshipped the golden calf, when all their diseases returned as a punishment for their defection from God. The women, during their stay in the desert, were exempt from the customary ailments to which women are subject, as a reward for being the first to declare themselves ready to accept the Torah. When the tabernacle had been consecrated, God now said to Moses, "So long as you had not yet erected the tabernacle, I did not object to having the unclean and the lepers mingle with the rest of the people. But now that the sanctuary is erected, and that my Shekinah dwells among you, I insist upon your separating all these from among you, that they may not defile the camp in the midst of which I dwell." The law in regard to lepers was particularly severe, for they were denied the right of staying within the camp, whereas the unclean were prohibited merely from staying near the sanctuary. The lepers were the very ones who had worshipped the golden calf, and had as a consequence been smitten with this disease. It was for this reason that God separated them from the community. 13 sins are punished with leprosy by God: blasphemy, unchastity, murder, false suspicion, illegal approbation of the rights of others, slander, theft, perjury, profanation of the divine name, idolatry, envy, and contempt of the Torah. Goliath was stricken with leprosy because he reviled God. The daughters of Zion became leprous in punishment for their unchastity, and leprosy was Cain's punishment for the murder of Abel. When Moses said to God, "But behold, they will not believe me," God replied, "Moses, are you sure they will not believe you? They are believers and sons of believers. You, who suspect them wrongly, put your hand into your bosom." And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. Uzziah presumed upon the rights of the priesthood and went into the temple to burn incense upon the altar of incense. He was just about to commit the offense when leprosy broke out on his forehead. Leprosy fell upon Naaman, who had grown arrogant because of his heroic deeds. For slandering Moses, Miriam became leprous as snow. And Gehazi was punished by leprosy because he frustrated the purpose of Elisha, who desired to accept nothing from Naaman in order that the cure might rebound to the glory of God. Another important law revealed on this day referred to the celebration of the second Passover feast. Mishael and Elzaphan, who had attended to the burial of Nadab and Abihu, were godly men, anxious to fulfill the commandments of God. Hence they went to the house where Moses and Aaron instructed the people, and said to them, "We are defiled by the dead body of a man, so we are kept back from making an offering to the Lord in his appointed season." So, are we kept back from making an offering to the Lord in his appointed season among the children of Israel? Moses at first answered that they might not keep the Passover, owing to their condition of uncleanness, but they argued with him, asking that even if, owing to their condition, they might not partake of the sacrificial meat, they might at least be permitted to participate in the offering of the paschal lamb by having the blood of the offering sprinkled on them. Moses admitted that he could not pass judgment on this case before receiving instruction from God, for Moses had the rare privilege of being certain of receiving revelations from God whenever he asked him. He therefore told Mishael and Elzaphan to wait for God's judgment concerning their case, and the sentence was indeed revealed immediately. It was also on this day that God said to Moses, "A heavy blow of fate has fallen upon Aaron today, but instead of murmuring, he thanked me for the death that robbed him of his 2 sons, which proves his trust in my justice towards them, who had deserved punishment more severe. Go then and comfort him, and at the same time tell him that he must not come, at all times, into the holy place before the mercy seat, which is upon the ark." These last words greatly aggrieved Moses, who now thought, "Woe is me, for it seems as if Aaron has lost his rank, since he may not at all times enter the sanctuary." The statement of the periods for his admission into the sanctuary is also so indeterminate that I am not at all sure whether they are to recur hourly or daily or annually, every 12 years, perhaps even 70, or not at all. But God replied, "You are mistaken. I was not thinking of fixing a certain time, whether hour or day or year, for Aaron may enter the sanctuary at any time, but when he does so, he must observe certain ceremonies." The ceremonies that Aaron, as well as every other high priest, had to perform on the Day of Atonement before his entrance into the Holy of Holies were symbolical of the 3 patriarchs, of the wives of the patriarchs, and of the 12 tribes. Only by depending upon the merits of these pious men and women might the high priest venture into the Holy of Holies, without having to fear the angels that filled this space. These were obliged to retreat upon the entrance of the high priest, and even Satan had to flee whenever he beheld the high priest, and did not dare to accuse Israel before God. Aaron's grief about the death of his sons was turned to joy when God, on the day after their death, granted him the distinction of receiving a direct revelation from the Lord, which prohibited both him and his sons from drinking wine or strong drink when they entered into the tabernacle. On this day also, Moses received the revelation concerning the red heifer, whose significance was never given to any other human besides himself. On the following day, under the supervision of Eleazar, Aaron's son, it was slaughtered and burned. Although, besides this one, a number of other red heifers were provided in future generations. This one was distinguished by having its ashes kept forever, which, mingled with the ashes of other red heifers, were always used for the purification of Israel. But it is in this world alone that the priest can purify the unclean by sprinkling this water of purification, whereas in the future world God will sprinkle the clean water upon Israel, that they may be cleansed from all their failures and from their idols. The lighting of the candlestick. The eighth law revealed on this day was the lighting of the candlestick. After all the princes of the tribes had brought their gifts to the sanctuary, and God had bidden Moses to let them offer each his offering, one a day, throughout 12 days, Aaron, profoundly agitated, thought, "Woe is me! It seems as if, owing to my sin, my tribe has been excluded by God from the participation of the dedication of the sanctuary." Then God said to Moses, "Go to Aaron and say to him, 'Do not fear that you are slighted and are deemed inferior to the other princes of the tribes. You, on the contrary, shall enjoy a greater glory than all these, for you are to light the lamps of the candlestick in the sanctuary.'" When Israel heard God's command that the lights of the sanctuary be lighted, they said, "O Lord of the world, you ask us to make a light for you, that are the light of the world, and with whom light dwells." But God replied, "Not because I need your light do I ask you to burn lamps before me, but only that I might distinguish you in the eyes of the nations, that will say, 'Behold the people of Israel that holds up a light before him who lights the whole world.' By your own eyesight you can see how little I have need of your light. You have the white of the eye and the black of the eye, and it is by means of this dark part of the eye that you are enabled to see, and not through the white of the eye. How should I then, that am all light, have need of your light?" God furthermore said, "A mortal of flesh and blood lights one light by means of another that is burning. I have brought forth light out of darkness. In the beginning darkness was on the face of the deep. Then I spoke, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. Shall I now be in need of your illumination? No, I commanded you to light the candles in the sanctuary, that I might distinguish you, and give you another opportunity of doing a pious deed, the execution of which I will reward in the future world, by letting a great light shine before you. And furthermore, if you will let the candles shine before me in my sanctuary, I shall protect from all evil your spirit, the candle of the Lord." Simultaneously with the command to light the sanctuary, Moses received the instruction to celebrate the Sabbath by the lighting of the candles. For God said to him, "Speak to the children of Israel. If you will observe my command to light the Sabbath candles, I shall permit you to live to see Zion illuminated, when you will no longer require the light of the sun, but my glory will shine before you, so that the nations will follow your light." Aaron was distinguished not only by being selected to dedicate the sanctuary through the lighting of the candles. God also ordered Moses to communicate to his brother the following revelation: "The sanctuary will on another occasion also be dedicated by the lighting of the candles, and then it will be done by your descendants, the Hasmoneans, for whom I will perform miracles, and to whom I will grant grace. Hence, there is greater glory destined for you than for all the other princes of the tribes, for their offerings to the sanctuary shall be employed only so long as it endures, but the lights of the Hanukkah festival will shine forever. And moreover, your descendants shall bestow the priestly blessing upon Israel even after the destruction of the temple." The candlestick that Aaron lighted in the sanctuary was not the common work of mortal hands, but was wrought by a miracle. When God told Moses to fashion a candlestick, he found it difficult to execute the command, not knowing how to construct it in all its complicated details. God therefore said to Moses, "I shall show you a model." Then he took white fire, red fire, green fire, and black fire, and out of these 4 kinds of fire he fashioned a candlestick, with its bowls, its knops, and its flowers. Even then, Moses was not able to copy the candlestick. So, God drew its design on his palm, saying, "Look at this and imitate the design I have drawn on your palm." But even that did not suffice to teach Moses how to execute the commission. Then God had him cast a talent of gold into the fire. Moses did as he was told, and the candlestick shaped itself out of the fire. On this occasion, as on other occasions, God had to present the things tangibly to Moses in order to make certain laws intelligible to him. In this way, for example, at the revelation concerning clean and unclean animals, God showed one specimen of each to Moses, saying, "This you shall eat, and this you shall not eat." Next, the 12 princes of the tribes. End part 58 of 95, TheLegendsOfTheJews.com.